Ever walked into a dealership and saw a bike collecting dust? Untouched like it's got a curse on it? We're talking about Japanese motorcycles that should have flown off the lot. Solid specs, bold styling, great price tags. But for one reason or another, they flopped. In this video, we're counting down 15 Japanese bikes that dealers are practically begging you to take home. Some brand new, some used, all priced way below what you'd expect. And make sure you stick around till the end, because the bike at number 1 is so ridiculously cheap, your glove box coins might just cover it. Number 15, the Kawasaki Ninja 500R. When it hit the scene back in the late 80s, the Ninja 500R, also known as the EX500, promised everything a new rider could ask for: sporty styling, a forgiving ride, and enough punch to make the freeway feel fun. Powered by a 498 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled parallel twin, it delivered around 60 horsepower and could hit 110 miles per hour, all while sipping gas and keeping insurance premiums low. It was built to be the everyman's Ninja, comfortable enough for commuting, fast enough for canyon carving, and cheap enough to undercut its rivals. In theory, it should have dominated the entry-level market. But while the EX500 was mechanically solid, it never shook its training wheels reputation. Riders who wanted the full sport bike experience often skipped it for sexier options, while beginners sometimes found the styling too aggressive. And with minimal updates over its 20-year run, the Ninja 500R started to feel like a relic, stuck between eras. Still, it earned a loyal fan base. Today, you can find decent examples for under $2,000, and if you're lucky, even closer to $1,500. That's a steal for a bike that delivers on basic thrills without biting back. Not flashy, not famous, but definitely not forgotten. From budget sport bike to baby cruiser, our next ride proves you don't need muscle to make a statement. Just enough attitude to turn heads at a red light. Number 14, the Yamaha Verago. Originally launched as the Verago 250 and later rebranded as the V-Star 250, this little cruiser was Yamaha's way of saying, you don't need a big engine to look cool. With classic, low-slung lines, a real V-twin engine, and a seat so low you could flat-foot it in flip-flops, it promised the full cruiser experience without the intimidation. Its 249 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin pushed out around 23 horsepower, paired with a 5-speed transmission and carburetor-fed fuel delivery. Not exactly a rocket, but that wasn't the point. This bike was built for beginners, short riders, commuters, or anyone who wanted Harley vibes without Harley weight or wallet pain. So what went wrong? Not much, really, unless you needed highway power. The Verago 5-Star 250 was perfect for city cruising and backroad fun. But throw it on a fast interstate or add a passenger, and it started gasping for air. That said, for what it was meant to do, it over-delivered. On the used market, they're practically giving them away, sometimes as low as $1,500. Dead simple to maintain, easy to ride, and surprisingly hard to outgrow, until you finally do. But if the Verago was the cruiser for cool beginners, the next bike was the cruiser for every beginner, whether they wanted it or not. Number 13, the Honda Rebel 250. Before the sleek Rebel 300 and 500 hit showrooms, there was the CMX 250C, the original training wheels cruiser. With its iconic peanut tank, low-slung stance, and humble 234 cubic centimeter parallel twin, this Rebel didn't start a revolution, but it did quietly get thousands of riders on two wheels. Honda built the Rebel 250 for one reason: to be the easiest possible way into motorcycling. It weighed about as much as a backpacking trip, offered a seat height so low you could park it with your knees, and delivered power in soft, manageable doses. Its 5-speed carbureted engine made around 16 horsepower, barely, but it would get you to work, to school, and back with a smile. But time caught up with it. As newer bikes offered fuel injection, disc brakes, and actual acceleration, the Rebel 250 stayed frozen in the past. For many, it was good enough, but never more than that. And in a world moving fast, good enough became left behind. Today, pre-2015 Rebels go for $1,500 to $2,500, depending on mileage and care. They're still a great beginner bike. If you don't mind adjusting a carb and kicking the tires on 20-year-old suspension, the Rebel 250 might have been easy to love, but the next bike, it was easy to ignore, until you actually rode one. Number 12, the Suzuki GS500. For decades, the GS500E and its fair sibling, the GS500F, were the quiet workhorses of motorcycling. Not flashy, not fast, but always there, patiently waiting to be someone's first ride, commuter mule or weekend escape. Suzuki built the GS500 to plug the gap between entry-level 250s and big-bore monsters. With its 487 cubic centimeter air-cooled parallel twin, dual overhead cams, and about 45 horsepower, it offered enough grunt to get you moving without getting you in trouble. The GS500F added a full fairing in 2004, giving it a sportier look without adding sportier performance. But here's the rub. While it promised practicality and ease, it also promised zero excitement. Riders praised its comfort, neutral handling, and low running costs. But twist the throttle expecting fireworks, and you'd be met with a polite cough. Compared to rivals like the Ninja 500R or Yamaha's FZ6, the GS500 just felt boring. Market-wise, the GS500 was a slow burner. It never skyrocketed in value, but it earned loyal fans who loved its DIY simplicity. Today, used models go for $1,100 to $2,500, depending on condition. They're affordable, tough, and still a great platform. If you're okay riding something that feels more like a tool than a toy. If you found this list interesting, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more exclusive insights coming your way, so don't miss out. If you've ever dreamed of riding through the woods, hopping back onto the road, and then commuting to work, all on the same bike. Number 11, the Kawasaki KLR250. The KLR250 was made just for you. On paper, it had the right ingredients: 249 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled single, 6-speed gearbox, kickstart only, because who needs convenience, and enough suspension travel to soak up everything from potholes to pine cones. This bike was meant to be the jack of all trades, part dirt bike, part street machine, part military mule. And it kind of was, if you weren't in a rush. It made about 28 horsepower, weighed only 117 kilograms dry, and topped out around 86 miles per hour if you were patient and going downhill with a tailwind. But don't let the numbers fool you. In the real world, the KLR250 was spunky, light, and agile off-road, with a surprisingly smooth engine thanks to dual balancers. It could dance through trails and dodge city traffic like a squirrel on caffeine. That said, taking it on the freeway felt like asking a teenager to run a marathon. It'd do it, but you'd hear the whining for miles. Despite its versatility, the KLR250 never found cult status like its big brother, the KLR650. It was always dependable, rarely exciting, and often overlooked. Most ended up caked in mud, sold for cheap, and replaced by flashier, fuel-injected alternatives. Today, you can find one for next to nothing, assuming it's still in one piece and the kickstart leg hasn't scared away potential buyers. The KLR250 tried to be everything at once, but the next two bikes, they didn't even try, they just were. Simple, scrappy, and stubborn as a mule, they were a tag team of trail-loving legends. Number 10, the Yamaha XT225 and TW200, a dynamic duo of dirt-leaning dependability. If motorcycles were characters in a Saturday morning cartoon, these two would be the plucky underdogs who always save the day. The XT225 is the agile adventurer, quick on its feet, ready to leap over logs or sneak through alleyways. The TW200, it's the chunky sidekick with tires so fat they look like someone accidentally installed ATV wheels. Both of these bikes were built for one thing: making life simple. No flashy tech, no confusing electronics, just an air-cooled engine, a steel frame, and a get-on-and-go attitude. The XT225 packs a 223 cubic centimeter single that cranks out around 19 horsepower, enough to climb a mountain or cruise a back road with a grin. It's tall, light, surprisingly capable off-road. Think of it as a mountain goat in a motocross jersey. Meanwhile, the TW200 rocks a 196cc thumper that only makes about 11 horsepower. But don't laugh, It's got the kind of low-end grunt and fat tire traction that'll get you through sand, mud, snow, or a Walmart parking lot with equal ease. Neither of these bikes is fast, and that's the point. They're about exploring at your own pace, with a smile on your face and a toolkit you'll barely ever need. Drop them, pick them up, stall them, kick them over, break them. Well, good luck. It's harder than it sounds. Even in 2025, the TW200 is still in production, because why fix something that's already borderline bulletproof? New ones go for around $5,000, and used XT225s or TWs often hold their value thanks to near-mythical reliability and the fact that there just isn't anything else quite like them. From trail-slaying goofballs to pavement-pounding pragmatists, we're trading knobby tires for center stands. Number 9 isn't flashy, but it just might outlast your truck. Number 9, the Honda Nighthawk 250 and 750. Back when motorcycles were getting flashier, faster, and more complicated, Honda went the other way. The Nighthawk series was built like a handshake, honest, solid, and no surprises. The 250 was your entry-level wingman, and the 750? That was the working man's leader bike, minus the drama. On paper, the Nighthawk 250 featured a 234 cubic centimeter air-cooled twin pushing out around 20 horsepower. Lightweight, carbureted, and humble. The 750 packed a 747 cubic centimeter inline-4 that made about 74 horses, smooth, air-cooled, and dead simple to wrench on. Both came with 5-speed transmissions, center stands, and enough reliability to make Swiss watches feel insecure. But here's the thing, they were so practical, they bordered on invisible. The 250 was perfect for learning or commuting. Just don't ask it to pass a semi. And the 750, it had decent power, but in a world obsessed with sport bikes, it didn't exactly set hearts on fire. No fairings, no racing heritage, just pure function. Buyers respected them but didn't lust after them. They depreciated like furniture, and for years they were forgotten, until riders realized they were actually gold mines of dependability. If the Nighthawk was the quiet genius of the motorcycle world, our next ride is more like the laid-back drifter, simple, soulful, and just stubborn enough to stay in production for over 30 years. Number 8, the Suzuki Savage LS 650, later known as the Boulevard S40. Born in 1986 and hanging on until 2020, the Savage was Suzuki's answer to riders who wanted big cruiser vibes without the big weight or price tag. It ran a 652 cubic centimeter air-cooled single-cylinder engine. Yes, a thumper, making about 30 horsepower and 45 Newton-meters of torque. Light, simple, and unmistakably retro. It was a rare breed, a single-cylinder cruiser. That meant it had decent torque off the line and was a breeze to handle in the city. With a low seat height and mellow power delivery, it became a favorite among new riders, smaller riders, and anyone just wanting a chill backroad companion. But once you got past 120 kilometers per hour, around 75 miles per hour, the fun wore off. Vibes from that big single cylinder would shake your fillings loose. The suspension was basic. The rear brake was a drum, and highway riding felt like a chore. Despite this, it stayed in production for over 3 decades. Why? Because it was cheap, reliable, and had no real competition. In the end, the LS650 didn't roar, it hummed. But for thousands of riders, that hum was good enough. But if you think a one-cylinder cruiser lasting over 30 years is impressive, meet a bike that squeezed sport bike DNA into a touring frame and accidentally created a cult classic. Number 7, the Kawasaki Concourse ZG1000, a sport touring legend that gave you ninja DNA and a dad bod. Launched in 1986 and running strong for 2 decades, the ZG1000 was Kawasaki's answer to overpriced European tours. With its 997 cubic centimeter, liquid-cooled inline-4, borrowed and returned from the Ninja 1000R, it offered 110 horsepower, shaft drive, and a massive 28.5-liter fuel tank. It was built for the open road and long-haul comfort, not stoplight drag races. On paper, it was fast. A top speed of 134 miles per hour, quarter mile in 11.7 seconds, and solid mid-range pull. Just look at that. But in the real world, things got a little clunky. At 270 kilos dry, this thing wasn't exactly nimble. Around town or in tight corners, it felt like a freight train on two wheels. Touring, fantastic. Smooth ride, good wind protection, and hard saddlebags included. But the brakes and suspension? Let's just say they were designed more for Iowa highways than Alpine switchbacks. Still, it had a loyal following. Riders loved its simplicity, reliability, and value. And because Kawasaki barely updated it over its 20-year run, used models became dirt cheap, perfect for budget-conscious adventures. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't sleek, but it got you there and back again and again. While the Concourse was a freight train built for the open road, the next bike tried to be a cruiser icon and stumbled hard trying to fill those boots. Number 6, the Honda Shadow VLX600. The VLX600, officially the VT600C, rolled off Honda's line from 1988 to 2008. It was pitched as the just right middle ground between the tiny Rebel 250 and bulkier 750cc cruisers. And with its low-slung seat, stretched out forks, and choppy exhaust note, it looked and sounded like the real deal. Power came from a 583 cubic centimeter liquid-cooled V-twin, tuned for torque and styled after classic Harley architecture, right down to the semi-single pin crank. It made about 40 horsepower and 35 pound-feet of torque. Not bad, until you notice the 4-speed gearbox. Yes, 4. In the city, the VLX felt great, stable, smooth, and beginner-friendly. But on the highway, riders often felt like they were ringing it out in top gear. Above 65 miles per hour, the engine buzzed, and many wished for a fifth gear that never came. Still, for what it was, it delivered. It was simple, reliable, and cheap to run. And while it didn't have modern tech or premium finishes, it had charm, and just enough grunt to keep newer riders smiling. Today, it's a staple on the used market. Affordable, approachable, and just rough enough to feel like a real cruiser without the Harley tax. And there you have it, the Honda Shadow VLX600. Solid, simple, and just a little rough around the edges. But now, things are getting serious. We're rolling into the top 5, so stick around. These next bikes are the real showstoppers. Number 5, the Yamaha Seikka 2. The Yamaha Seikka 2, or XJ600 if you're fancy, was that humble commuter bike from the 90s that did everything and got zero credit for it. Built from 1992 to 1998 in the US and longer in Europe, it was Yamaha's idea of a practical, everyday ride, somewhere between a laid-back standard and a sport bike that never hit the gym. Under the tank, a 599 cubic centimeter air-cooled inline 4, making 61 horsepower and 39 pound-feet of torque. Enough to cruise the freeway, lean into a corner, or leave your friend's Ninja 250 in the dust. Just don't expect R6 performance. This was a smooth, reliable, mid-range warrior, not a track star. It had a 6-speed gearbox, upright ergonomics, and a little fairing up front. Just enough to whisper, "Yeah, I'm sporty," kinda. The Seikka 2 was based on the earlier XJ600, but tuned for better street manners, giving it a reputation for bulletproof reliability and stress-free maintenance. Knew it sold for under $2,000. Now, you can grab one for less than a fancy bicycle. It's not glamorous, not fast, and not rare, but it just keeps going. A true working-class hero, the Seikka 2, proof that not every hero wears a cape, or in this case, even a flashy badge. But we're not done yet. Sliding into next, we've got a bike that dressed like a sport bike, but lived a double life. Number 4, the Suzuki Katana 600, and its big brother, the 750. The Katana wasn't a razor-sharp track tool like its GSXR cousins, but it wanted you to think it was. With that full aerodynamic fairing and aggressive stance, this was Suzuki's way of saying, "I can haul, but I've got a mortgage now." The 600 packed a 599 cubic centimeter inline 4 with around 78 horsepower, plenty to wake up your morning commute. And the 750 added some extra grunt for riders who wanted just a little more flex at the stoplight. Both engines were hand-me-downs from the GSXR lineup, but detuned for the streets. That means smoother power, better mid-range, and way fewer back surgeries. Top speed? Around 130 miles per hour, 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds. Not super bike fast, but for the price, not bad. And unlike your average sport bike, this one won't make you feel like you're being folded into a suitcase. Upright enough for touring, sporty enough for back roads. Best of both worlds. Back in the day, it was a great mid-tier option. Now you can find them for next to nothing. Old tech, sure, but it works, and works, and works. Honestly, this thing's more committed than half the marriages in America. The Katana wasn't the sharpest blade in Suzuki's drawer, but for riders wanting sporty looks without the spine-crunching ride, it was a hidden gem. Number 3, Honda CB250, CB450, CB500 twins. 3 bikes, 3 decades. One mission, never die. They weren't built to turn heads or win races. These Hondas had one job: start every morning, ride all day, and shrug off decades like it was nothing. If motorcycles had a grizzled veteran category, these guys would wear the crown. It starts in the 1960s with the CB450, Honda's declaration of war on the British twins. 444cc, dual overhead cams, torsion bar valve springs. Yeah, that's right. In an era of push rods and leaky cases, Honda showed up with tech that was years ahead of its time. 45 horsepower, 165 miles per hour, top speed, and a red line that embarrassed Triumph and BSA. It didn't just run, it screamed for its time. Then came the CB500T in the 70s. It was basically the CB450 with a longer stroke and a bit more mellow vibe. Around 34 horsepower, smooth delivery, and a relaxed ride. Not the most exciting bike, but it aged into a cult classic. Today, more of a garage trophy than a daily rider. But the real MVP? The CB500 twin from the 1990s. A no-nonsense 499 cubic centimeter DOHC engine that made 57 horsepower and ran smoother than half the bikes twice its size. Top speed? Close to 193 miles per hour. Longevity? Honda engineers must have dipped this thing in adamantium. 300,000 miles? Easy. Commuters, couriers, and riding schools swore by it and still do. No thrills, no frills. Just legendary reliability. You can pick one up today for $1,000 to $2,000, ride it cross-country, and still be early for work the next day. Sometimes the toughest bikes aren't the fastest or the flashiest. They're just the ones still standing when everything else falls apart. All right, we've had the workhorses, and now it's time for something a little spicier. Number 2 brings the heat with a bike that flew under the radar but packed a serious punch. Yamaha Radian 600. Because sometimes, the sleeper hits the hardest. Built between 1986 and 1990, the YX600 Radian was Yamaha's quiet flex. A bike that didn't try to dominate any one category, but somehow nailed just enough of everything. It was the motorcycle equivalent of showing up in jeans and a t-shirt, and still winning the race. At its heart was a 598 cubic centimeter air-cooled inline-4, borrowed from the FZ600, but returned for street manners. It made 66 horsepower and 38 pound-feet of torque, enough for a top speed around 125 miles per hour, quarter mile in 12.7 seconds, 0 to 60 in under 4. But here's the kicker: you don't need to be folded up like a pretzel to enjoy it. Yamaha ditched the aggressive riding posture of its sport bike siblings and gave the Radian upright ergonomics and real-world comfort. They dropped the engine into a Maxim 550 frame, softened the cams, and rejetted the carbs for a meteor mid-range. It wasn't built to chase red lines. It was built to rip through city streets and back roads without breaking your back. And it worked. This thing had torque right where you needed it. Low, usable, fun torque. It didn't scream, it surged. Every throttle twist felt like it had purpose, whether you were tearing down the boulevard or just vibing on your daily commute. Best of all, they're still dirt cheap. For under $2,000, you can pick one up today with retro lines, a rock-solid engine, and more capability than most modern commuters. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but twist the throttle, and the Radian reminds you sometimes the quiet ones hit hardest. And now we've made it to number 1, where reliability meets simplicity. No frills, no thrills, but it's a legend in its own right. Let's dive into the bike that somehow got everything right, without trying to. Number 1, Suzuki GN125, GN250, GZ250. They weren't built to thrill, they were built to survive, and for a while that was enough. On paper, the GN series looked like the perfect beginner platform. The GN125 delivered between 11 and 14 horsepower from a 124 cubic centimeter air-cooled single. The GN250 stepped things up to 21 horsepower with a 4-valve 249 cubic centimeter engine. Then came the GZ250, the same engine, dressed up in cruiser styling and stripped of even more spirit. They were all lightweight, affordable, and easy to ride. In 1988, the GN250 sold brand new for just $1,859. Can you even imagine that? It was that cheap. But here's the problem. None of them felt like real motorcycles. The GN125 barely managed highway speeds without feeling maxed out and dangerously buzzy. The GZ250 tried to mimic cruiser vibes but came off as undercooked, from its soft power delivery to its small toy-like scale. And when lined up against better-equipped rivals, the entire GN family started to feel more like temporary tools than passionate rides. Still, they carved out a niche. Rider training schools and motorcycle programs loved their bulletproof simplicity. In developing countries, they became known as machines that could take abuse and keep going. Their engines were basic. Their parts were cheap. Their charm, debatable. They succeeded not because they sparked emotion, but because they refused to break. Reliable? Absolutely. Memorable? Not so much. And in a world where riders crave experience over endurance, that kind of forgettable reliability is its own quiet kind of failure. Don't forget to subscribe because we have got more surprises coming your way.